Okay, my friends, this happened to pop up. I was tagged to look into this on Facebook, and this is from Jamie Blackwell. Now here he says, here is one of the wonders of the world which looks like planets and celestial bodies. He's talking about these big stone balls. It's called the Valley of Planets in Kufa region of Arab state of Libya, and the region is one of the treasures of the state of Libya with its desert, although not many people know about it. Al Unwat is located near the city of Gat in southwestern Libya in the remote desert of the valley known as Wan Tufk, in the area from Hamada to the Gal Heights. Perhaps the strangest thing in Libya, if not the strangest thing in the world, in this valley, huge rocks take the form of planets. They're just huge things. Hence, visitors, so they get visitors to look at these things. Valley makes them feel like they are in space. The average diameter of each rock is about 10 meters. That's like 30 feet. All right. Since these spherical rocks, they're all these big round rocks, are stacked side by side. You see them here? Boom, boom, boom. They're all over the place for miles. It says, since these spherical rocks are stacked side by side at a distance of about 30 kilometers. That's over 20 miles. These are rocks that for some reason, scientists could not guess, they move by themselves. No, they don't. In a motion similar to the movement of the planets of the solar system. They just move through the earth all for no reason. These stones have a completely different composition than any other rock that exists on our planet. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of these around, and they just haven't looked. In fact, they were classified as living rocks, which they are, because they die like any other living creature. Well, let's talk about that. It turns out that when stones reach the end of their lives, they break from the inside out until they are completely cracked and practically hollow. Well, I don't agree with that either. What also distinguishes the valley is that the solid, rocky soil without water and agriculture. All right, so I commented, I said, well, I'm going to speak about this because I've been making a lot of statements on this particular page that these are tendon balls, because I'm showing them tendon balls, and, you know, and there are concretions also. Yes, absolutely. That's not one of them. That's a tendon ball. And I call them tendon balls. They're tendon antithesis. We're going to get a little deeper into this than I normally do because people just don't understand any of it. So I make it very simple. Let's get a little more technical today because I can see that people are starting to understand. This is actually literally a biology. That ball was attached right here. You see that little scruffy looking stuff? Coming right up through that spot right there. There was a strap that attached to that ball. And that's what that ball is, an anchor inside of skin. Literally, this is skin, clay, kaolin clay. I'm sure it's kaolin clay. Kaolin, however you want to pronounce it. All right, this is the ball that is in that post that I was just showing you. If you look carefully here, you see this little scruffy looking stuff here and over here? There was a tube, a strap going up inside there. They break off, they snap off, and they leave like a little scaly spot around where they were attached. Now, there was another one right down here, going in, somewhere inside there's another ball. The straps break off after in certain conditions, they get brittle right in that one spot. They just pop off. This, I'm almost certain, if anybody can tell me I'm wrong, I'd like to have them tell me I'm wrong. I would say that's kaolin clay. It's a very, very white, powdery clay. And it is this is what your skin is made of. That's what skin is literally made of, is clays, is kaolin clays. You know, of course, there's other things in there, but that is the structural component of skin, kaolin clay. Now, I want to make something clear, though. There are a bunch of different types of skin in your body. Some of them have a lot more collagen and keratin as grip skin on your hands and so forth. This is like on some facial skin, very fine skin. They use this stuff to make fine china. So this is it right here, fine china, 4 types of porcelain clay. White kaolin, whatever you want to pronounce it, is now a primary ingredient in almost all porcelain clays mined all over the world, because it's everywhere. It's the skin of these gigantic creatures. Now remember the part about where he said there's no water in this area. That's why this hasn't washed away. This is very erosive. It just erode right away and turn into mud. This is what mud is made out of. There's white kaolin clays, and then there's other ones that are red. Red has got more blood in it. And that's the stuff that makes things grow well, is the red kaolin clay is better than this. I believe. I could be wrong. This could work just as good. But the red is where you have a lot of blood, and the blood is where the transition metals are, and the transition metals are what move things around in plants. They need those transition metals to move things in and out of the cell walls. All right, remember I said there's a strap that breaks off, and that strap is gone from those, and the clay is all around it, and there's a little scruffy spot here and a scruffy spot here where it came in, and it's gone. The rest is the ball. All right, here's one that eroded just the opposite, because there was some water in here, and the water washed all the easy kaolin clay, I take it either way you want. Now, that is the strap that came up to this one, and it's still here. One of the tops, they break off, and I understand now what happens. The higher up they are in elevation, the easier they do to break. The ones that are very low, that were in the water for very long times, they stayed solid round balls. But this is not a concretion. This is biology. This is a tendon enthesis. I'll call them tendon enthesis. They could be anywhere in the body, but they anchor the fibers. Let me just show you how the fiber to muscle to so forth works, and it'll make a little more sense, I hope. Okay, this is what tendon and muscle and bone looks like. So let's start with the muscle. Normally, this is the way it works. You have muscle that's attached to a tendon. This is what I call an abrupt transition. So the muscle comes here, and boop, all of a sudden it turns into this tendinous fibers. And then you get this, they call it fibrocartilage and calcified fibrocartilage. Calcified just means it's now embedded in the bone. And this part is more of the fibro, and this is more of the calcified portion. See it right in this area? So now it's embedded in the bone. But all these little balls, these balls are what, you see all these little tiny balls? Those are the balls that I'm talking about that are all over the world. And they're anchored into the bone. They're everywhere. And on every one of them has one of these little straps coming down to it. All right, so let's just reiterate this thing. This is where that strap breaks off. It leaves a scale right here, and the ball stays. Now, if they dry out quickly, they break into little bits and pieces, like this. You see, this is very high up. They crack and break and fall apart, because the higher up, the quicker they dried out. The quicker they dried out, they fall apart for some reason. I haven't really figured it out exactly, but the ones that are buried, like this one, Sam Oswagowicz. Now, I want to be sure you understand, I don't work with any of these people. I don't know Sam. I've contacted him, and I think maybe at one time I had some contact with him, but it's certainly nothing. I really don't work with any of these people that I'm going to show. Let me put it to you that way. Now, this is the scale that came off when that thing snapped off of there. And you see how good this is? That's because it's been impacted in moist mud for literally forever. That's the key. When they dry out, they fracture and fall apart. All right, so that was the original one, and I say that's where the strap is, and that's where the little goop is on the side. I have another one here that it changed in a very similar but different way. This one, all of the clays washed away and left the strap, and of course the thing broke. I know I've shown you these, but I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I showed you Sam with this little scale missing. That's where the things popped off. And I showed you that this is how they pop off right here. This is one that is still stalk sticking up, and that broke off because it must be high up and it dried out quicker than the rest of the things. Now, this is how they form in the body. Here's how tendons grow. Some of them. There are just like, well, at least 10 or so different styles of tendon. I can show you. The balls form differently depending upon where it is in the body. But primarily they form into a roundish sort of ball. And then they mineralize in the center, and they start to grow these tendon fibrils. And they change chemistry. All right, they express the chemistry differently. These cells become different. They become elongated and fibrous, and then they form that little mat right there, and that's what breaks off. But inside, some of them have all of these crystals, and I mean fabulous crystals, and that's where they find geodes are primarily these. If you can find, like this is I believe one of those is all smashed up, but there's a it's on here somewhere. You got to find the entrance. I believe it's right there. I believe that's the spot where the attachment was. And then if this was intact, it would have been round. It's smashed up. You see this here? I believe that's the outside of this. But of course it's pretty well smashed up. And that's the black is the vein blood. And the red down here is the arterial blood. Like black and the red. Anyway, they form these balls. Now, what else happens? These are entheses. Now, and they, like I say, they form all kinds of different ways. In the body, you see this, whoops. You see this tendon and ligament. Well, tendon is this right here. All right? And the enthesis is where it locks in right here. That's enthesis is the anchor. All right? Now, they also have an enthesis for ligaments. Well, what's the difference between a tendon and a ligament? Well, a ligament holds two bones together. So let's say you had a bone like this, which is a bone. Of course, it's broken, and the inside has the marrow, and there's still a little bit of bone left. But let's say this bone was attached to here, like this. That uses a ligament. The ball right there is the ligament. Boom. Now, I don't want to get away from this other one hardly at all. I'm going to be stuck there for my whole life. With that little tab right there. That thing is tough, tough, tough. You see these things around the world, these balls sticking up, and they never fall over. They took an elephant and tried to knock over this ball that looks like it should fall over anyway, all by itself. They couldn't knock it over with the elephants. So this is tough, and that holds the bones together. So my interpretation of the elephant thing is there was a ball in the ground is here, and the other ball is right up here, stuck to it. And this ball's not going anywhere. All right, now, so the ligaments and the enthesis are the same thing, but one of them is bone to bone, one of them is muscle to tendon to bone. But these are the balls and the straps. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And these are huge, huge, compared to the ones that are in the skin. All right, these are the ones that are in the skin. These are the little balls that are in among the flexible stuff like that. This is the layer of skin, or also it is the same around every organ in your body has this type of a layer. You call it mucosa, fascia. Anyway, it wraps its surrounding, and underneath has all of these little balls and straps and fluid-filled bags so that your organs can move and flex and twist and be distorted and everything, and they will come back to where they're supposed to be according to where these balls are. All right, now I think these balls might have that little organism inside that's a little curlicue, and they call them ammonites. And I'll show you why I think that may be. But I don't think anybody's ever seen what's inside of one of those balls. I mean, this is just like microscopic. All right, but they have the tools now. They maybe could look inside of one of these. I'd love to see what's in one of those balls. But those balls are with these brown springs. So you can twist and pull and squish and do all that. And the fluid-filled bags will flatten and stretch and move and do these things. And they'll come back to wherever this ball was anchored. These are the balls they're finding all over the world. And they come very, very small, and they come very, very large. All right, here's something that would lock it up for me, I think, is if somebody went out to these balls that are on Huntington Beach in the United Kingdom. These balls have eroded from this wall of flesh, literally a wall of flesh with the skin on top. That's how huge these creatures were. Now, these balls are not growing here. They have eroded out, but the sea creatures are living on here. Some kind of algae or whatever it is growing on there because there's blood in here. These things are saturated with blood. That's what they're living off, is the blood. And this is salt water. And in fresh water, they grow moss all over them. I mean, you should see well, I show it to you. But this is this. It's just a wash, you wash, and the balls fall to the bottom because they're hard as can be. And all of the red, gooey, bloody stuff turns into mud. Precisely what you see right here. This is exactly what you see. It's mud. The balls are laying here. Something's eating away at the biology of them because they are fertile. They're fertile. Now, in the Moki marbles, this is skin from either a finer skin area or maybe an organ or maybe, I don't know what, or maybe it was just a smaller creature, but these are what they call the Moki marbles. And these are really, really hard. Now, all of the clays and so forth have washed away from here. Before, these were all embedded in clay, and they look basically like this, Now, these are biological. Now, these are not concretions. They say these are concretions. Absolutely not. They're definitely 100% for certain not concretions. Or are these? They didn't just all of a sudden start rolling around inside of that flesh. Now, let's take a look at some other stuff. All right, you see these? I mean, they get staggeringly large. The ones in the original post, they said 30 meters wide. That's huge. Now, inside here, there's some kind of structure going on inside, and I don't know exactly what. But this is the outside, and these are biological. You see one here, here. They're all down the beach. They're everywhere. People are crawling all over them, looking at them, saying, wow, look at this. Kids are having a good time. This is what you call breaking balls. They're everywhere, and they're broken up. Could that be an ammonite? I don't know. It's got some kind of a structure to it. There's some kind of formation going on in there, cavities and so forth. Outside of that, I do not know. You know, the more I kept looking at this, the more I kept thinking, this is some kind of attachment that is ripped off of here. You see how it's pasted on here, and that yellowish stuff it's ripped away from the yellowish looking stuff, and then there's some kind of a formation inside the central core. But I believe there was an attachment. Well, I know there's an attachment somewhere, and I believe it must have been right there, and it glued itself in like this, and when it snapped back out of here, everything just sort of fell apart. And I'll show you what ammonites look like, and they have a very similar look to them as this. All right, let's think about this logically. This is about halfway down the ball, and whatever was anchored in there was anchored way deep inside the ball. It's not just at the surface. It's way inside. You see, that's like half of the ball is broken off of here. Somebody must have tried to see what was in there, and that is what is in there. Now, think of this. I have been looking at the ones, the ammonites that are in the center of these balls. let me show you what they attach like in the center. Now don't forget, that was the ball. Go back and look at it if you have to. The attachment spots. This is what an ammonite looks like. All right? You see these, even this right around here, all this stuff? And then you see this gluey looking stuff. If this was, just think about this. If this was half of that ball and this part came away, what would you see? Remember this stuff here. Remember this coloration even. Remember the center. Remember that. This is what you see right here. It's the same thing. You see all these little things around the edge exactly the same way. There's that coloration. Here's it ripped away. And here, I believe, was the core, the center. All right, and now the rest of the ball would be out here. And at that point, the ammonite turns into a little curlicue and it goes to a strap. And I believe the strap has enough give in that curlicue to do the job of what a tendon does, is to be able to anchor and still be able to give it a little bit of flexibility. I think that was the job of the ammonites, being inside of literally biological tendon balls. Now, I do see them in concretions as well, so I cannot fully explain that. But I do believe this is the result of a huge ammonite. And you can see there's chambers in here, and all of the biology is the same, even the coloration. Now, not only that, you can see basically it's the same damn looking thing. Not only that, these little spots here, these little white spots all over the place, those are tendon fibers that anchor in there. That's not a throat of anything. That's where the fibers anchor. Like this is a tendon ball. And these are the same kind of little white fibers. It's exactly the same situation where the balls anchor. All right? Because they're going to come in here to some little other tiny little ball that will be down inside there, a tiny little thing that will give it some strength so that the fiber won't just slide out of there. All right, don't forget, see these lumps are all on one side, there's nothing down here. It's just identical. See all the lumps are up here? Well, we can't really see the bottom, but at this point it stops having the lumps. And it's got some kind of a structure to it. It sure looks like it was an ammonite in there. Regardless, this is from biology. This is not concretions. All right, so all of these balls they call concretions. I disagree, as I have shown you. They are not concretions. They are biological. However, concretions do exist. Now I'm going to show you some that have been broken apart. Again, I don't work with any of these people. I am just showing you what they did and trying to compare it to what I am claiming is that some concretions, yes, and I can't really explain how it does happen, but I think I have an understanding now, possibly. But concretions are 100% different than the biological formation of these stone balls. See, I remember I told you that those balls that are in Huntington Beach are being eaten by something, and this is the same thing here, only this is fresh water, and the balls are completely saturated with biological bloody substance that moss just absolutely loves. Moss thrives, and all green things thrive on blood. They sell blood meal. And these here, look at how many of them there are. They're not just here a little bit here and there. Look at them. They go all over the whole cliff here. Probably miles down. These are the same as the Moki marbles, only they were protected for a long period of time, it appears, and now they are just sort of eroding out from underneath of a glacier or something. And it's things scientists still can't explain. And there's 12 things. And I can explain all of them because they just don't, their eyes aren't open big enough. Okay, my friends, I am always talking about an abrupt transition where the muscle meets the tendon. And it meets it absolutely flat as a pancake. And they will break off absolutely flat as a pancake. So will the tendon, because the tendon has actual literal steps that it steps through. And they will break, just zip straight across. It won't be anything like this. It'll be straight across. But there'll be the slip skin that slips over the top of it will wrinkle right at the cut for a tendon. It will wrinkle up right about in here if it was cut here. Let me show you an abrupt transition. You want to see an abrupt transition? Remember, muscle to tendon. All right, muscle to tendon. This little layer right here is a very tightly held gluey strip that holds the muscle to the tendon. But see how tough that stuff is and how flat that abrupt transition is? It's not all this little choppy looking stuff. All right, what they may not understand is this is a gluey substance. It's glue that glues the tendon to the muscle. I'm going to show you some tendon, and they could form these fibrils. This is what tendons form. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. Hold on. I got so many things open here. Here it is right here. You see these? As tendons come down, they're big and they're like, they call them ropes. And the ropes turn into these bundles. You see these three bundles? Now these bundles are square. They start off square. Then they turn into hexagon within the squares. But there's a zillion of these inside of one of these. Look at them. Look at how many of them there are inside of this one. So inside of this one there's only 3. But inside of this one there's dozens, hundreds. And inside of every one of those there's another dozens. And inside of every one of those, there's another dozen. And inside of every one of those, dozens, all the way down the line until they hit the balls. There's so many tendon fibers, that's why they never break. And this is a bundle going into the earth to wherever those balls are, way down in the earth somewhere. And these are probably somewhere down around here. All right, because you can see they're coming out of one of these shapes here. You see the shape here? This is probably the best one. It's not really great, but you can see that there's a shape to these. So it's either down in here or over in here somewhere. Because before that, they're square, then they're nicely hex, and then they turn into sort of just little tiny fibers. And by you get down the end, they're just fibrils. But you see collagen, fascia, tendon. This is what preserved. This is the preservative. And boy, I'll tell you, they preserve very well. All right, so check this out. I'm saying this is glue in here. And here's what it looks like when you say up in here. Here's the glue. Right across there. You really can't see it all that well, but it is there. And then above is the muscle. And that usually erodes away if it's out exposed. And that's exactly what happened here. You see these? This here, I'm not sure where this is, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think it's maybe in Iceland or Greenland or somewhere. But this is the gluey stuff that glues these tendons. I mean, this stuff is tough. And these are some of those columns that were probably somewhere in this area here. Probably here. I don't think they were square. They were probably down in this area. Okay, now here is my allegation that this is not a concretion. This just doesn't happen by concreting. This is, I believe, was the attachment spot, and this is the fiber that was inside of this tendon enthesis. Now, what did this enthesis do? Apparently, I would think this was in some form area that it had to be able to distort a smidge on its own. It couldn't be a ball that just wouldn't move. It had to be able to do this or do that or move a little bit this way and that way. And the fabric kept it all secure. All right, now I'm going to show you a bunch of them. I'm going to show you a little video by a guy who did a fabulous little job. It's only a few minutes long. And I'll show you, he's going to show a lot of these things. He's going to make some statements. I'm probably not going to agree with every one of them, but he did an absolute fabulous job, and I will agree with a lot. All right, let's watch this outstanding little video. But what I want you to remember is this pattern here. And then and again, this is biological. That is not a concretion. And this pattern right here, which is the Moki marbles. Now, let's watch this little presentation. Only a few minutes long, very nicely done. All right, just so you understand what the mainstream says about concretions, they have all kinds. Hard, compact mass formed by the precipitation of mineral cement within the spaces between particles found in sedimentary rocks and soils. And then they go down to and they show all of these different areas and what they look like and so forth, and they talk about the different types, the composition of them, the occurrence of them, where they show up, and all of a sudden they show up in these walls and septarian concretions. We're going to see all this stuff. This little presentation this guy did, exceptional. And he did his homework. He knows exactly what the mainstream says about these things. It's not correct, but he's going to make the mainstream presentation extremely clear. Don't forget, you see these patterns? Remember I showed you that one? Well, I don't want you to miss it. All right, this is the kind of thing that would form that kind of a pattern, I believe, if it eroded as they show them eroding. And again, we'll be looking at that. But they're showing all of these things, these Morokai boulders and all of the balls, bowling ball, beach, they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere. And these are the Moki marbles. I showed you those before. They're iron oxide concentrations. What's iron oxide? Blood is primarily iron. And what is blood? It's different oxides of iron. When you breathe in, you're breathing in oxygen, and it's combining with your blood, and it's giving you Fe2O3, which is an oxide of iron, and Fe2O2 is a different one, and it floats back and forth. You have different oxides. That's what these are made up of, is blood iron, basically. And it turns solid in some conditions, and in this condition it did. It turned hard and solid, and they're just rock solid, like little balls of iron, basically. And inside of them, a lot of them have that other coating. I mean, they have a coating, and inside of them is like this sand material. But again, that's biological. This is not concretions. They just, all of a sudden, billions of them show up. All right, this is the guy right here. Very good. I put this up a couple of years ago about concretions. They're soft tissue mud fossils. That's what I said. They are from biology. Now, I didn't even consider, to be perfectly honest with you, the concretions rolling up into these balls, but I can see it appears that that's true. Now, I am going to look into it a little deeper, because I just fluffed it off to the side saying, oh, no, they're all tendon balls, or I call them tendon balls. They're tendon anthesis. They're these anchors. I showed you very clearly, I'm sure. And we're going to look and see what he has to say, and I'm going to not interrupt him. And I guess it's Marita and Rick Dalrymple. And again, very nicely done. And mine goes into the geology of concretions and the balls. All right, some of them have all different types. I showed you the ones that have all the webbing around it. This one has like eggshells. There's at least a dozen or so. I figure at least 8 or 10 specifically obvious ones. All right, now let's see what he has to say. Here goes. Okay, here's the video. This is Marita and Rick Dalrymple, and this is from 2 years ago. Septarian nodules, which are concretions. So these are a little bit special, but they're still concretions. Now, I say a lot of these he's going to be showing are biological, and some of them, I do agree, must be concretions. I think the concretions are more the exception than the rule. Let's see if it makes sense to you. You see what you think.
Today you can see that there are a selection of septarian nodules, and I thought I would discuss the difference between a septarian nodule or a nodule and a concretion. They're actually two different things, although they're used almost interchangeably throughout the world. They're used interchangeably, but they show a formational difference. So what we call septarian nodules are actually concretions, and concretions are different than nodules in the fact that a nodule is usually got a hard outer shell with a different material on the inside. So this is a Moki marble, famous from here in Utah. They're ironstone nodules, and so they have the ironstone shell on the outside, and then the inside is sandstone. And so it shows a formational change in them, and that's why they are two different things. That said, here we have a bunch of septarian nodules. Septarian concretions. I should put concretions in parentheses. I don't know how to do that while we're talking. So these are all from different places in the world, but most of them are from here in Utah. Utah is famous for these ones that have the nice big yellow crystals inside with big cavities, and sometimes here in Utah you get inclusions inside these. So these form around something, and then as that something inside is moved back and forth, one theory is that as they're moved back and forth along the shoreline by water moving, that they would roll up and roll into a mud ball, similar to a snowball effect. And so you'd get these little tiny things that would snowball into these big nodules. It's kind of hard to imagine how some of these that weigh 300 and 400 pounds of mud were being rolled back and forth along the shoreline. Like I said, it's one theory. So as sometimes they were filled with algae, and the algae would decay and desiccate and eventually rot away, leaving an open cavity. Given the compression of the weight, the forces of the weight, they get compressed and smashed. That's where you get all these shatter lines, where they're all brecciated. That's where the rock was brecciated, shattered, and then cemented back together with the yellow calcite. So you get a few different things in here. You get the yellow calcite, and then in the Utah ones you get this light brown siderite crust around the outside. You can see around all the shattered rock, which is actually a limestone-ish type mud. The ones from Morocco get a black siderite around them, and so that's how you can distinguish them. So inside the cavities, sometimes they nucleate around other things besides algae. Here is a little crab inside there. We're going to show that up close here in a minute. Sometimes you'll find ammonites, clams, all kinds of shell fossil stuff inside of them that they've nucleated around and then formed. The hollow ones are suspected to have formed around algae. So other things you get inside there is this is a barite cube that is coated with amethyst. This is all pyrite and siderite, the black in there, and then you can see the crab. This is a septarian nodule not from this area that these come from. These are all from down by Orderville. This one is from down by Price. You can see it's a septarian nodule. It weighed about between 400 and 500 pounds. We couldn't move it. There was four guys, and we couldn't even make it roll on the ground. And so we broke it open, and you can see that it was full of these barites and calcite crystals, and then there's some little probably goethite crystals in there, but they could be siderite. They're too small to really tell. So these ones are also from here in Utah, but these ones are from down by Huntington, a little south of Huntington, Elmo. Nope, further south than that. So these ones are famous for having these little red.
All right, I'm gonna just stop it right here, but I'm gonna tell you right now the things that he's looking at. Some of them, this is biological, and that was the attachment spot, and this is the crust that grows around. These are the fibrils that come down, and there is some red blood in here, which is the source of nutrition for these fibrils, and that would have been the attachment spot right there. Now, I'm going to go back through some of his statements and show you what I believe. But if you look carefully, you can see this is not likely that this was just rolled around and created this and put some blood in the middle, iron oxides. Well, iron oxides is blood. Now, here's another one where he's saying there are these little red areas in them, and in the red, in my mind, this stuff here, anywhere there's this red, there's blood been in here or is still in here. Now, in this here, a lot of it, the red blood drained out and it filled in with silicates. All right, but whenever you see this this abrupt transition of this scale. Same thing with this. You see how abruptly that transitions? And this is made to do some kind of giving and taking, apparently, it looks like to me. And as far as I can determine, some of them have that ability. The ones with the webbing inside, they must have that webbing there for some purpose, and I believe it's to do this sort of stuff. Other ones have like eggshells, and other ones have just hollow, and then other ones have just crystals going every single different which way. All right, there's really nothing here that I can see that is not biological, except perhaps that one there. Now, this one here, they form a cavity inside of the tendon enthesis, but you can see that's the scale around the outside, and then inside there's a webbing of fibers in some of them, not all of them. They're as I showed you, there's all kinds of different construction of these balls. All right, this is showing the progression of the tendon enthesis developing its stalk and its fibers and its chemistry here, and then its chemistry here that attaches it to the crystals. And then there's all kinds of other matrix. It's built into this crystal matrix, but the crystals they're tough. It's not going to rip out of there. Let me put it that way. As a matter of fact, let me show you one I have here. You see that? That's where the stalk was attached here. It's ripped off. You see those tendons? This is actually abraded quite a bit. So we're down right at the point where the attachment from the stalk goes into the ball. The ball is inside of here. All right, but this is literally the same as that right there. All right, so here we are here, right there. All right, there was another, they're all over the place here because the tendons seem to group together in clusters, but that one there you can really see. And this has been extremely abraded. Everything's been removed, the tissue above, all the way down to where that is embedded into those crystals. And in the microscope, it's just phenomenal looking. See that? And again, this, you want to see something? I'm going to show you something. Wait till you see this. Or maybe you already have. This is, like I say, a tendon. Watch this. I'm going to put some water right on there. This is where there was actually, that was another plate that came across, and there's another ball attached to that spot right there. All right, and that anchors right on below here. And then this mat, which is solid red blood, as if you can see. All right, and they rehydrate instantly as soon as you put some water on it. All right, so again, this is extremely abraded down to a point where we're way down here at this point right here. All right, so that's that. All right, I'm just going to roll through a bunch of these things. I've shown you the tendons and the Moki marbles and the webbing, and this I haven't shown you, but this is abrupt transition, and that's how these tendons can break. They are built in blocks, and normally it can just give a tiny little bit. When you overstress them, they pop, and then you get this abrupt transition. You see that? I mean, wrinkle zone right here. You get a very distinct wrinkle zone right there. On both sides. They pull it back together, they sew it back together. But the ones that you see sticking up, if you see one like Devil's Tower, you look at the top of it, you're going to see it's a wrinkle zone. And all it is the Achilles tendon. It's not the whole foot, it's just the Achilles tendon. These things were absolutely, I'm showing you the things that were so big you just can't even imagine. And even my own place here I have, this is where I got this. Right here, look at this. Hold on a second. All right, look at this. This is a hair follicle. That's the erector pili muscle, attaches right there. There's a globby little thing here, which is the sebaceous gland. All right, the bottom is where the hair follicle, the round spot, the bulb is there. And then there's a vein and an artery at the bottom, two little round entrance points. And then the hair follicle comes up to the top. Now, if this had completely eroded away, you would end up with a spot where the muscle attached, which is gone. The sebaceous gland would just slide down right in here, and you'd end up with this bulb. Well, that's what we have right here. That right there is where the muscle attached. All right, this right here is the sebaceous gland right there. All of this, you see all this floppy stuff here, this gooey stuff around the top, that was basically up higher, and it slid down the shaft. And then the shaft broke off down in here, basically right there. And this has slid down and is laying here on the side, all that gooey stuff. All right, this is the root ball. And those two little dots right there are the vein and artery. This is a hair follicle. This is 1,000 times larger than our hair follicles. What kind of creature it was, I don't know. And my other stuff is DNA tested. I have giants 150 feet or more at least. I go around 180. But that one there is DNA tested. You know, it's no question about it. I have other ones. Three things I had DNA tested. Two of them were giants. One of them was just very, very big. A 3-foot long fingertip, 3 feet long. And then I had another one that had about between 3 and 4 foot wide hand. And that one had fingertips scanned and everything else, a CAT scan. I had DNA tests done on all of them. And they came back as mitochondrial human DNA. So the mother of all of those was a human mother. Now, going all through these, I've shown you all the balls and all this. Did I go through this about the structure and the function of... Anyway, the ligaments and tendons, they hold you together. And this anthesis varies depending upon the tissue present at the skeletal attachment site. Where does it attach to? That's the whole deal. There's two main categories of anthesis: fibrous, which is all the little tiny fibers, and fibrocartilaginous anthesis. Most antheses in the body are fibrocartilaginous. That's what I focus on, is the fibers. All right, there is the mats, and I think they must be talking about the aponeurosis tendon versus the rope tendon, fiber tendon. Now, function of anthesis is to dissipate stress away from the interface. Now, nature is pretty cool, the way they develop things, and I think these ammonites were the stress relievers long ago. You see this? Let me show you what an ammonite is first of all. I think maybe you already know about this, but remember I showed you here, I say that's an attachment. And that came out here to a fiber. All right. Now, this could pull this way, and it would unwind like this, just a little bit, and then it would come back, just enough, and come back. But this was very, very tightly held. So if these were in the center of these balls, so let's look at another shot here. Okay, I'm going to show you my interpretation of what this may have been. And of course it's an ammonite, and it's in one of these stone balls. Alright, this is basically my take on these ammonites, possibly. You can see there is that coating, that shell around it. And the ammonite is in the center, and I believe it can pull this way and sort of give just enough to where those ribs sort of compress a little bit and move this way. Now in my case here, I've got it showing that it's pulling against a bone. All right, and that's just locked in. Now, this gives it just enough give so that if these fibers pulled, this thing would go, just enough. And it would come back, and just enough, because this would pull it back. These little hooks in here would collapse, sort of, and then they just spring back. Collapse and spring back, which would do the same thing the tendons do now. These are extinct. These are gone. They don't have these anymore. Now, I'm wondering, are the tendons that would come out of here, if I'm correct, and there are tendons, and I believe there were, are they different than tendons now? Or were they just like one little strap that could not be stretched, and this was the only part that could be stretched? That's possible, because now the tendons actually do their own stretching, but not much. Now, I'm wondering whether this part here would stretch on its own, because it's got to be locked in. However that thing is attaching, it's got to be locked in with all those balls and fibers. That's how tendons work, because they can really work and do all kinds of crazy things, and really, and they don't go bad, as long as you're healthy, and you don't really get crazy. But you can rip a tendon, and you can rip the ball right out too. And I can actually have shots showing the balls ripped out of tendon. Now, in this case here, I believe there's going to be just enough rotation to fulfill the function that a tendon does. It's under tension, and it comes back. It's like a spring. That's nothing more than a spring. It appears to me. All right, so my allegation is that coming out of here, these fibers attach right in here, right to there. And there's little white spots all over there, exactly like my tendon that I have here. You show these little white spots. I'll show you better. This is a tendon ball, and that would have anchored in, and all of this stuff has eroded away. And there was another one on top of it. I have that piece here somewhere that slides across the top. There was another ball on top. There's a whole ton of them together. And all those little white spots are things that would have attached to these little white fibers. So don't forget, this is looking into the end here. And those fibers go in straight down into these little cavities here, those little white holes. You see, these are exactly the same as I'm showing you here. All right, that's how they anchor. That's an anchor. That is not a throat of something. This is an anchor. And I showed you those kids playing. And as far as I'm concerned, that is basically identical. It has that little stuff here and the edge around it, and they're all over here. Now, and you can see it's ripped away. You see how it's ripped away from here? This is like the gluey substance that held it in. And that stuff ripped away, just like if it was this one here, it ripped out of there. It's almost identical. I mean, it's just crazy, but it appears to be what it is. All those balls didn't just show up there for nothing. Did I show you this? This is in Iceland. These are all the fibers. These are all tendon fibers. All right, and I'm not sure what phase of the tendon they're in, but they're not perfectly symmetrical. But you see all these little blocks? This is what tendons are made like. That's why normally they'll snap in one spot. This happened to be probably an artery was running through here, because this right here is an artery. There's no question about that in my mind. All that red iron oxide, that is red blood. And it's up over here too. So there was an artery that came across here somewhere. And this is in Iceland. All right, like I said before, there's a ton of different styles. I don't know how many there is, but this is another one, and this is eroded in a different fashion where everything eroded away, the outside, and inside into these cavities here. And these cavities do appear to be virtually identical to ones the kids were playing on. Now, was it bigger than that? Or I really don't know at this point. But this was sent to me by a friend, Lee Simpson. But look at these patterns, and remember those kids. Let's look at the kids are the ones that are. You see, that pattern is in there. It looks like to me. What does that mean? This is inside, deep inside. Now, it appears that there's another coating around these. All right, all of this stuff surrounds that. And Lee sent me only the center part, the eroded part. That's what it looks like to me at this point. Because all we have is those little squarey looking things that were inside the center, and none of that yellowy looking stuff around. Just a guess at this point. But it is obviously not a concretion, it's quite biological. All right, this is like similar to the one Lee Simpson sent me, a little bigger. These steps, nobody carved those. This is in the biology, and this right here, you see this red, that's red blood. When you see that and you see the green stuff growing next to it, that shows you probably got red blood here, and this is probably an artery. And the black blood is either here or over there, because whenever you have an artery, you're going to have a vein somewhere in the vicinity. So this is another stone ball that's just huge and has eroded to its core, possibly. This thing could have been this whole, as big as this whole field here. You see that one? That's a kind of an oddball. I can't account for it, but I think this is that really like flint or chert, that really heavy duty, really tough stone. But what the core, I don't know. All right, follow me through on this. This is my thinking. These are the kind of balls that are everywhere, just like the Moki marbles. Now, if they were in skin, which I believe this is skin, or something that going to have those little balls, they're probably going to have that little strap inside movable. And I think they might have that enthesis, the ammonite inside of them. I don't know. I've never seen anybody crack one of these particular ones open. But they should all be the same. They're all biological, from the same source. If I'm correct, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure that is biology right there, my friends. That is flesh. And that is what they call mucosa, skin. You know, it's your skin, or it's fascia, or whatever. And all of that stuff that's eroded away is the mud. Inside, I'd like to see what these are constructed of. It would be an interesting, investigation to do, and I'd appreciate if somebody does it, let me know what they find. All right, that's an anchor. They're literally everywhere on the earth, and they've always been just overlooked because nobody had any explanation. So geologists just sort of back off of them, or they just say, "Oh, they're just concretions," and then they leave it at that. Well, like I say, I don't say there is no concretions, but virtually everything I have shown you is not a concretion. It's all biology. All right, so don't forget, we're talking about concretions. All right, I never thought to do this. I got to be honest with you. I never realized that just regular rocks, you could do that and you'd find shells and so forth in them. Like, is this at the seashore? Are these inland? Whatever. But it's obviously concreted around a shell. So here we got is the beginning of a concretion. Now, he probably shows more and more. Now, this is my stuff, and I'm showing that, these concretions were these stone walls. It's not a concretion. And what's this one here? Massive concretions. She's saying they're just gigantic, massive. They just happen by themselves. Here's another one of mine. examine this again, showing a ton of proof to back everything I'm saying. You know, what's inside these balls. He smashes that open. Fossil Hunt beach balls. Concretions. Now, and then this guy down here, I showed this before. Here's another guy's, there's a concretion now. Let's see what happens. He breaks it open. And he's breaking all these things open. He's finding ammonites and all kinds of things inside of them. Check this out.
Here
RB fossils.
is a rather large concretion found in Washington. I found this probably back in 1995, a long time ago. I was with some buddies. There was 4 of us, 3 different vehicles, traveling some logging roads, and I came across this on a cliff, and they said it was nothing and to leave it by, but I grabbed it anyways because I couldn't help it. And let's see what's inside this big concretion. Whoa, look at that. There's a clam on it. This is the end cap, or whatever you call it, of a vertebra, one on each side. I think it's called a...
Wow, that is amazing. I gotta look at this thing a lot closer. That is incredible.
Epiphyseal, something like that. Anyways, that's what that is. It's pretty large, so I'm sure cetacean of some sort.
I gotta go with that's gonna be, if it's biological, it's gotta be. That's not gonna happen just by itself. Make that perfect round shape. 2 completely different materials. That's biology. That's almost like a outside of a bone, and then you got the marrow inside, that type of thing, which obviously it's not because it's a round ball. But what it is, I don't know.
And being it's by itself and not attached to the actual centrum of the vertebra, I'm guessing that was a young animal, a big...
Okay, I can see it now. There is the vein side right here. And that's the artery, I would say. Or it could be there. It's hard to, I need to have it in my hand to really be sure and dig around under there a little bit to see what, but I got a feeling it's up in this area.
Young animal. Anyways, I thought that was pretty dang cool, so I brought it home. Whatever you call it, of a vertebra, one on each side.
I don't know why you're saying it's a vertebra. It's a round ball. It's pretty interesting. And like I say, I believe that all of these balls that are so perfectly constructed like that, that's just didn't happen by accident, something rolling around on a beach. And it's just way too many of them to think that that's logical. All right, well, look at this really carefully. This is a scale that came off of here. Well, there's more scale all the way over to here. This thing was really attached well, and it splays out to make a very good attachment to the ball. It's ripped all the way off over here, so you got layer after layer after layer down to the center. And if you really look carefully, you can see the center right here. You'd have to, think about it a little bit, and you can use your little imagination a little bit. But that's a dead center, as far as I'm concerned. That's probably, if there was water on there and you threw water on there, I believe you'd see the definition show up of that circle. Water makes a big difference now, and it makes a big difference in how long they last. This has just been excavated out of the ground, it looks like to me, recently. That's why it's in such perfect shape. Now I'm going to show you ones that dried out in a higher up elevation, and they dried out, they didn't have mud to go along coating them. That's why I call my stuff mud fossils. Now, Here's the kind that were sticking up in the air. They crack, they break all up here. That's basically the same thing like Sam has, but when they're up in the air, they dry out quick. I have some other ones here, shots like this one right here. You see how they dry out and they crack up? Those were high up, all the mud ran off and they were exposed, and then they just split up. I have some, well, these are little ones, but they do the same thing. They'll split all by themselves because they're dried out. Like these here, you see? Once all the mud runs off, they're just sort of floppy and they fall apart. That's a guy's house, this van right there. So these are good size. I'm sure I've shown you enough to make my case. They're all over the world, and especially over by wherever water washes away and eats away at the oceans, they're going to show up. Now remember I showed you the tendon and the ligament? These are ligaments. Those two, it appear to me those are ligaments. And they were attached to two body parts that had to move with each other, and somebody cut it down the center. I can't believe that is biological. No, I wouldn't go along with that. Somebody cut that. But, you know, when you look at it, it doesn't seem obvious. Maybe it is. You see this little crack, and that crack just sort of lined up together. But that one's not lined up with this one. And this is not lined up with any kind of wrinkle zone over here. So I don't know. I got some petroglyphs on here. You got a layer over a layer here. You got a layer over a layer here. But this is a big, it's like I say, I don't know what it's attaching to, but it's like this. But then there's another one right here, which is smaller. So I don't know. Maybe it's a tibia fibia oblongata. I have no idea. All right, there's a tendon ball right there. It still has the strap attached to it. And this, I believe, is similar to that soft clay. Some people would argue that that's just wind blown and so forth. And again, I don't work with any of these people that are showing this, and I'm making claims maybe that they wouldn't support, that's the way science works. And I say that is the tendon enthesis strap that went down to anchor wherever it goes to. They all have a strap, every single one of them. Everyone that I know of, that if it's an anchor, it's going to be strapped somewhere. Now the ones that are in the interstitium, a lot of those don't anchor into anything like a tendon ball. They have like springs on them. A little different. There's a lot of different biology here, Okay, I'm going to just leave it at this. This is Bosnia. That's Sam Oswagowicz, and this is the balls that he's talking about, these Bosnian balls and the Bosnian pyramids. I have something to say about that as well. I normally have something to say about everything. But all it is that scab right there that I just showed you is because it broke off right here. It broke off, and the rest is the ball. That's how they work. They have a strap, and his strap is unstrapped. It's broken off, and again, I showed you these layers. It comes off, and in the right conditions, things will grow very, very nicely on those, as I showed you with those green mossy little, these are just like the Moki marbles, only they're now coming out, and they're just tasty little buggers for the moss. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. I have plenty of evidence to support the things I'm saying. So I would like to have some interaction, to get it out into a more mainstream situation than just us people that are talking about it here on, an alternative channel that
most people think, we're crazy. This is not crazy. This is going to easily be investigated, and all my stuff has been. I've got DNA tests on 3 of my samples. 2 of them are giants. 1 of them is our size. All 3 of them are anatomically exact, including fingernail fingerprints, fascia, pleura, all of that stuff. And so anyway, that's it for today. I love you all. And the concretions are just a little different. I got to work those out. I don't have a big explanation for concretions at the moment. But the things I'm showing you, I believe virtually everything I showed you today is not a concretion. It is from biology. So, like I say, I have seen some. I have to admit, they're concretions as far as I'm concerned. Like even that little shell, I think I showed them cracking open that shell, and I would not have suspected there would be a shell in there. Anyway, these are the things you learn. You got to learn. All right? Again, thank you. Have a wonderful day.